joining us via webinar. So it's my pleasure again to welcome you to this Faculty Engagement Series, and thank you for coming. Today we have Neil McCrillis, who will talk to us. And just to give you a really quick introduction to Neil McCrillis, but first, actually, before I do that, before I forget, those folks who are online, who are interested in asking questions, you can do so by using the chat function, I think. We have someone here who will relay your questions so they can be addressed. And of course, the audience is welcome to ask questions here as well. So Dr. Neil McCrillis joined us here at UIC as the first Vice Provost for Global Engagement and as an Associate Professor in History. And he also led the university's Task Force for Internationalization and Global Engagement. Prior to joining UIC, he was the Mildred Miller Fort Foundation Eminent Scholar, Chair of International Education, Executive Director of the Center for International Education, and Associate Professor at History at Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia. So Neil, thanks so much for, I'm going to pass now the computer.
Thank you, Nancy. The topics include links so that many of the things that we discuss, you'll be able to look it up online, follow up. So please make sure you have a copy of that with you, and be happy to send it out electronically if that's something that folks need through Nancy's office. So thank you. Thank you for coming to spend a little bit of time talking with us. And as Nancy said, if you have a question or something we're saying doesn't make sense to you, please stop us, because we really do want to have at least half the time today devoted for comments, questions from either folks that are here in the room or online. We understand there's about 50 people altogether, either online or here as well. As Nancy said, I'm the Vice Provost for Global Engagement, and my role here is to maybe sort of demonstrate where we have come and where we are currently in terms of global engagement. And then I've asked the chairs of the 4 committees on the International Advisory Council to sort of articulate very briefly where we think we're going in the next year, so that you have some idea of the past, present, and the future. And then we hope that you'll have some suggestions, comments that will be useful to us as we do our work as well. So that's the plan for today. And Ross, can you time me to make sure I don't go more than about 5 minutes?
Oh my gosh.
Because I really do want to leave plenty of time for everybody to contribute and have a discussion.
And can everyone hear okay? I know this is kind of a big room. Okay. Sorry.
Great. Yeah, thank you for asking, because the sound is not fabulous in here, but hopefully you can hear okay. So I don't know how many of you know what Office of Global Engagement is or when it was created. And so how many of you know what units are included within the Office of Global Engagement? Hands here. I don't know about online. Good. Then the initial part of what I want to talk about, which is very, very simple, is useful then. So Office of Global Engagement includes 5 units. Those units were brought together in the beginning of 2017 by a proposer and also by the Chancellor Emeritus. There were previously, those 5 units were reporting to previously 4 different vice provosts or vice chancellors. So as you can imagine, that didn't lend itself readily to a coherent approach to internationalization or global engagement. When I joined the 1st of March of 2017, I came as the first vice provost. The units have been for many, many years, been doing very good work, but had not necessarily worked together in any kind of coherent way. And so that really was the task, was how could we bring, initially the task was how could we bring some sense of common purpose and sort of leverage what we have already to produce better results for the campus as a whole. So the units that are within the Office of Global Engagement are the Study Abroad Office, so outgoing student mobility at the university level. We have a Tutorium Intensive English, which is our ESL. It's the only ESL program in the country with that name, so it makes it very unusual in terms of its title. About 300 and some students are in that point in time, so it's a very large program. Campus. The Office of International Services, which supports international students and scholars, obviously immigration issues, but much more than that. They do workshops and trainings on all kinds of things from taxes to optional practical training and a number of cultural issues as well. So that's another unit within Office of Global Engagement. In addition, we have International Affairs, which is the office that manages our formal agreements. So when we are making an agreement with an international partner, the nature of how that goes is managed by the International Affairs Office. Also, they manage delegations. So if we have a high-level delegation, they're involved with that, organizing that. And they also are a liaison with the Consular Corps here in Chicago, which we have a very good relationship with the Consular Corps within the city of Chicago. We also have an office called Programs for International Partnerships, PIP. PIP is our international contracting office. So, for example, in many of the colleges, we have 3+1+1 agreements. So a student is 3 years at their home university, 1 year as a non-degree undergraduate with us, and then they go into a master's program at UIC. So for that, many of the colleges work with PIP, all the structures and processes, contracts, and so forth, because they don't have staff to do that themselves. We can assist with that. So the offices within OG include the ones I mentioned. UIC Global is not technically within the Office of Global Engagement, but UIC Global, or you may know it by Shorelight, which is the parent company, UIC Global is, we liaison with them. We are the primary point of liaison, UIC Global. So that's what Office of Global Engagement is, the units within that. And at any point later, if you want to know more about any of those activities, I'd be happy to talk about it. Just some simple updates. So you saw here on the list of numbers. So we have 400 incoming UIC Global students this current fall semester total, going back to January 2017, about 1,200 students. So it's been a very significant and growing population, particularly among undergraduate. The graduate level intake was this fall was the first time. So that we expect that to be a growing part of what UIC Global and UIC are doing. One of the first things the Office of Global Engagement was engaged in was the International Travel Safety Policy, and I'm not going to miss an opportunity to encourage all of you, to encourage all students who are traveling internationally to sign up. They're required to enroll in that. It's a process by which they can then make sure they're informed about whatever the conditions are within the country. They sign up for the Smart Traveler program, check with the CDC recommendations, and they get the insurance, that comprehensive insurance that allows them to experience abroad. By the way, faculty and staff on UIC Business are now able to enroll in that insurance policy free of charge as of August. So that's a brand new development. We worked with the system office so that, in fact, anybody on official UIC Business abroad can sign up through the ITS enrollment. At the end, you can get to for the insurance and you get it free. So it's a great addition. And if you're wondering why you would want to do it, probably the best reason is that your policy that you have now doesn't cover you very well while you're abroad, and it almost certainly doesn't provide repatriation, evacuation, or emergency family visits. Almost certainly doesn't cover those. Important, and if you don't have them, very expensive scenarios for you. So last item for me, just to sort of let you know where we have come recently. 6 minutes. Okay. So we had a task force on the campus, a year-long task force, which finished and published its report in April 2018. By the way, that's available publicly. You go to our website, anybody can take a look at it. It looks really daunting, but most of it's appendices. The actual report is less than 15 pages long, so it's not that long. But it's really important because that articulated the vision for global engagement at UIC and a series of initiatives which the International Advisory Council has been pursuing last year and then going into this year. It's really the map that we're trying to follow as we go forward for greater global engagement. Just a couple of things that the first year for the International Advisory Council that we accomplished that we feel good about, and folks up here are all members of that International Advisory Council. We do now have a policy on international collaboration at this university. We never had one until last year. We also have an online proposal system. So if you're interested in proposing an international collaboration, it's online. It's pretty straightforward. And it can all be done virtually, so we don't have paper and emails, which just don't work very well in terms of a complex university like ours. We are working towards a Global and Cross-Cultural Studies certificate, which is an add-on certificate, which will be proposed by the College of Business Administration and Applied Health Science. Ross here is from that second college, so if you have questions about that, he can talk about that. So it's an overlay with an existing major. It's not a substitute. We had our first Mapping Our Global Community, which was an induction ceremony for all new international students. We did that in August. The chancellor was very kind enough to attend and to greet every single student, every single new international student who was at that ceremony, about 1,000, close to 1,000 students. And we have a visual, literally a map with pins that those students placed on it, indicating where they come from. So it really visually tells us how we are globally connected in the world. And then lastly, with the Office of Diversity and the Office of Faculty Affairs, we had our third faculty workshop on teaching international students. It's part of the Inclusive Classroom series. And I would to take a look at the materials, the modules, when they go online, which will be very soon. We're going to offer that every semester. So it's a kind of introduction to some of the issues that you might face in a classroom with just lots of international students. So that's some of the things we've been doing. And then the next segment is really to ask each of the chairs of the 4 committees within the International Advisory Council to sort of give you some of the ideas that they're thinking the committee will be pursuing this year. And hopefully you have some thoughts on that. So I'm going to start with my colleague, Ross Arena.
Morning, everyone. So I'm the chair of the Research and Scholarship Committee. Just took on that role, and our committee will be meeting for the first time this month. So at this point, we have some themes that we're going to consider that I'll share with you, and we would agree on which direction we would head. We wouldn't take on all of these themes, and then propose them to the International Advisory Council. And that's how the accomplishments that Neil just talked about got done last year. We proposed them and we went forward. So some of the broad themes, starting with faculty and international activities. So thinking about the P&T process and in language for recognizing international activities. We don't really have something like that on campus. We have one model at the department level, so we may consider how, put some substance to it in the P&T process. So faculty are encouraged and recognized for their international activities. Along the faculty lines as well, there's some universities out there with excellent models of a award or recognition program for excellence in international activity and collaboration. So we're going to talk about that, look at some of the models that are out there, and perhaps propose that to the International Advisory Council. Some other themes, thinking about joint programs, and is there an ability to do that? Is there a desire to do that? And we may look out at experience with this as well. Look at some models out there for that. Also looking at, how do we capture what we do on campus now, either individual faculty or teams of faculty that are collaborating, that are highly productive on an international level. So the library has a searchable index model that they're putting together, and we will propose that or explore how we kind of look at that model so that a faculty member could go in, find others that are in their area or a complementary area and doing great international work, and kind of a way for them to act. Then the last theme that we're going to think about, and there may be others as well, but thinking about the procedures for agreements, what's with the MOUs that Neil kind of mentioned, how do we gauge which ones are productive from a research and scholarship standpoint? Do we kind of put some measurable metrics in there for those? And then also the logistics of paying an international scholar. There's some barriers to that with respect to compensation or funding travel, honorariums, and those things. So seeing what we could do to make that more efficient, if we can do anything. But happy to answer questions. We're going to answer questions at the end.
Hi, yeah. So I'm Ellen McClure. I'm the chair of the Study Abroad Committee, again, which is under the International Advisory Council. And I also just started as chair of this committee a couple weeks ago. Our first meeting will be next week. And then we'll report back to the IAC and have some other meetings. And so we basically have two major things we'll be looking at. One is the recent Board of Trustees, the mandate on international travel safety concerning training and workshops and information to be given to faculty and students who are going abroad in UIC programs and even arts, the UIC, correct? Okay. And so right now, of course, our study abroad office does a wonderful job of having those trainings and even going over and above, but making sure that any program coming out of UIC that has an international component, that the mandate is being met, and how can we encourage that and have that go on, if that makes sense. And then the other major thing that we'll be looking at is the study abroad office was kind enough to produce a spreadsheet of where the study abroad office at UIC stacks up vis-a-vis the, I'm going to forget the acronym, it's IIE, the International Institute for International Education. I need to learn my acronyms. But in a whole bunch of categories. So vis-a-vis participation, what majors participate, what countries do students go to, diversity, the length of the programs that students are attending. So we're going to be just looking at that spreadsheet to sort of see where we go above and beyond, and where maybe we can just reframe things or spend a little bit more time, just looking at how we stack up and get an idea of where there are differences and why those exist. And we won't be doing anything about that this year, but like putting together, again, a roadmap for how to address those and ideas on how. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, I think so.
If you could repeat the question.
Yeah.
Online,
So, hello, people online. So the question was accounting for the low number of UIC students who study abroad, and whether that's the nature of the student body, whether they're aware of the marketing. Yeah, and I think we have an excellent study abroad office, but it sort of can't. It does a lot of things, and so one of the things we'll be looking at is the marketing, or can help, or how we can connect. Those of us who've worked at UIC for a long enough period of time, there tend to be lots of, the image in my head is lots of things that are hanging out there that aren't quite connecting. And so where are those areas? Where can we kind of align? That's why I think Neil's office is so useful. It's sort of bringing together all these strands that were kind of just giving off sparks and hanging out on their own. And that's one of the things we'll be looking at is with the marketing and the awareness of financial aid, and how we can help, I think, get the message of the study abroad office out and connect, again, the work that they're doing with the students a little bit better and get everybody kind of on the same, rowing in the same direction.
Should be looking at that screen, right?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Shal Pandit. I'm professor in the College of Business, and I co-chair the subcommittee on campus internationalization with Charu Thakral, who's in the Office of Diversity. We have two other members on our subcommittee, Ralph Keene, who's the Dean of Commerce College, and Patricia Pack, who's with VC Admin Services. So the main brief of this subcommittee is to create a more globally engaged campus environment, which is pretty broadly, but we have a few specific bullet points under that. The idea here is to create a global awareness on campus through programming or through campus signage and other means. And we've had one meeting on this topic just to develop some short-term and then some medium-term priorities. So we want to be able to accomplish something in the near and at the same time lay a foundation for something longer term, which needs a lot more work and which will become visible in the longer run. And the overall idea that my subcommittee discussed was we do want to have rigorous content and rigorous programming, but at the same time deliver it in a way that would engage our intended audience, which is primarily students. So with that goal in mind, a couple of things that we talked about were some kind of co-curricular programming on campus that would involve students from different cultural backgrounds, and it could include some small mentoring programs, could include dinners and social gatherings around festivals and events and such. Also, we are working on one short-term goal, which is to create campus signage, which would be placed at a few spots on both East and West campuses. The ideas that came up was to have kind of the signs that you see pointing to different cities or different places with distance. And we want to augment that with also potentially having some kind of a QR code where if you scan it with your cell phone, it'll some interesting fact about that place or something that'll keep changing on a periodic basis. So there's always something new to learn if you walk up to that pole. So
Or a literary quote.
Or that. So we are, we just started the discussion. So clearly it'll take us time, a lot of input from all different areas and people to develop a plan. But these are some of the priorities for my subcommittee for this semester.
Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Deanna. I'm the Dean of Students here at UIC, and I co-chair the International Student and Scholar Subcommittee with Jim Hammerschmidt, who's hiding in the corner over here. We also are going to have our first meeting next week, but really the focus of this committee is to look at the experiences of for international students and scholars while they're studying or working here at UIC. So we're going to be looking at such items as safety needs that people might have, housing needs, dining issues, issues of transition to the university, and if individuals are arriving early, what kind of greeting and arrival services do we have, insurance, legal needs that our international population might have while they're here. We're also looking at hopefully having some discussion about transitioning to the United States and having what does that mean in terms of a cultural experience. If people are choosing to come to the U.S. to study, then we hope that we can expose them to good cultural experiences while they're here in the U.S. Finally, looking at the issue of academic integrity and misconduct, which with the student population is a growing problem and concern, and how we can do a better job of educating international students related to issues of academic dishonesty. Okay, that's it. Meeting basic needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's where we're at.
We're in the early stages. Each committee is just beginning to have those discussions. So I want to know if you have suggestions, concerns, questions that you want to share. We always learn something new about these issues that relate to global engagement. So I'll open up the floor or online if there's someone asking a question as well. question is about, for the sake of people online, the question is about the proposed Global and Cross-Cultural Studies certificate. It is proposed. It's being proposed within the two colleges I mentioned, College of Business Administration, Applied Health Sciences. So if it goes through those colleges, which I think it will, then students in those two colleges will be able to, with a few options, for example, I know College of Business Administration says accountants can't do this. There's just no room in the curriculum. But with a few exceptions, undergraduate students in those two colleges in most majors will be able to pursue this. The structure for it, if I could maybe explain it, is very flexible, and that's the reason we think it can be scaled up for a lot of students, or relatively large number of students. It has an intro course, which is the only new course that's being proposed. Then there's coursework that's within the major, which the colleges are determining what those are, what that is. But it would be something that has global, international focus within the different majors. And then there's a third piece, which is experiential, which preferred option would be study abroad option. But there are also other options like international internships. So we want to make sure that students connect the experiential global learning with the more theoretical classroom-based global learning. And then the final piece is some kind of a capstone experience, which is international in nature, but is an existing course within the college. So their major, and as you probably can see from the two colleges, the focus, because of the two colleges, really on applied global and cross-cultural learning. So how can I actually use this when I become a professional in whichever field it is that I'm heading towards when I graduate? So it's very different from some other programs that are already at UIC, which have a more theoretical, typically a more international relations kind of focus. So it's a very different kind of offer. Does that answer your question? I see two hands. I don't raise the hand first. So the question is there a language requirement in the program? Another option that's in the proposal is that students in those two colleges, by the way, they don't have a language requirement in their degree programs. But undergraduate students in those programs would be able to pursue language study and towards the experiential requirement if that's what they needed or wanted. So we want to make sure that that no student has an undue financial burden by having to do a study abroad program that in their case, financially or because of their personal circumstances, family or whatever it is, that they can still achieve the certificate, have the kind of learning outcomes that we're looking for. So we need that flex. The foreign language is actually in there, and the school is, I can't remember.
School of Literature's Cultural Studies. We're happy to teach those students languages and to have literary quotes in them.
So the school that teaches all the foreign languages involved is very supportive of the proposal, including that option. So we're very pleased to have that. Does that answer your question? Ross, you want to repeat the question? Then Ross was chair of the committee that worked on that proposal last year.
I think the question was, how did the two colleges get chosen? We wanted an East-West campus theme, and Neil approached a couple of colleges on the East Campus, and looking at because it's an undergraduate certificate, and correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, but by far, Applied Health Sciences had the biggest undergraduate cohort, by far. So that seemed to be a logical home for it. But one of the things that will allow us to expand and bring in other colleges is with working with Dana Wright, we're creating these sample specializations, if you will, as a proposal to start. So business will propose one, Applied Health Sciences will propose. But then the hope is that other colleges become enthusiastic about participating and can propose their own sample specialization that works within their programs or within their colleges. And then we can grow out like that. So that if public health comes and says, well, we want to participate and propose a specialization, we wouldn't have to go through formal approval process again to add that on. According to Dana Wright, I think it's a FYI email to SCEP. Did I get that right? And then we can grow quicker. So really, we are hoping that other colleges, other departments, other programs participate as well and put together a specialization as well. Yes, I think your hand.
UIC global engagement start for a team to kind of build the district at the global level. Because I know that programs in our office to know how UIC globally. Another thing is, I want to know if you have any cultural awareness, cultural community, cultural competence going outside. Because they might be shocked or they might be shocking people when they get outside. They need to know how.
Well, maybe want to, I'll try to respond to both of those, but if others will have thoughts on it, definitely. So the question or the suggestion is that and you're absolutely right. There's been a lot of work, global engaged work at this campus in actually all the colleges over many, many years. I'll just tell you, when I first arrived, it struck me that it's very, very difficult outside of any college to know what's happening. It's almost impossible because, number one, there wasn't a central office to gather that information in any way. And so it had to be, I relied very heavily on meeting with the deans in each of the colleges and on folks that were already here within the offices that became OGE to find out, what goes on, what has been going on, what are the existing partnerships. But it was very much anecdotal because there was no way to gather that information currently. We do have, through this proposal, this new online proposal process, we will have the ability to gather information on an ongoing basis now going forward because it will be electronically stored. And we'll know, for example, when an MOU or MOA expires. We know who the proposer was. We know who the contact person, all that, which we had, but it was paper files and in no way gathered together in like a database. So it's very difficult. And Ross already mentioned the library is spearheading this system, which will be, as I understand, a voluntary system, but faculty members will be able to put their expertise, international expertise, along with other aspects of their work into that system, and it'll be searchable geographically and also searchable in terms of topic or research interest. To be honest, I think one of the things I really think is important is that we allow people to network, provide the tools for people to network more effectively. Not that we give them the information, but they can get the information on their own because we never know what the question might be. And if you have access to that, and follow up with a colleague who has a great connection in, let's say, Rwanda, Kenya, or Japan, or wherever it is, then you can find out yourself whether, in fact, that's something that maybe you can build on. If we have a good partnership, it's much easier to that existing partnership than it is to create a brand new one with an unknown potential partner, institution, organization. It's to build from strength. We can know what that is. So we hope that'll be part of the response. In terms of the outgoing student remote, one of the requirements for the mandate from the system, which is a pretty basic requirement, is that all students, outgoing study abroad students, have a pre-departure orientation. There is currently no university requirement. Study abroad does that with all the programs that they manage, but there has not been an institutional requirement for that. And I have to say, there's not been a requirement for faculty either, which if you think about it, if they're leading a group of students, really they should have some training before they go. And I think the cross-cultural component, at least an understanding or awareness of that, at the very least, that's really important for faculty. So at least a partial response to your question. I don't know if anybody wanted to add.
That was exactly. programs that have workshops at the district.
Yeah, on the other, can't be mandated, but we would like to have on-site student orientation upon arrival, because it's just a different dynamic, a different experience for the students and the faculty than the pre-departure orientation. We can't always mandate that because there may not be an entity on the other side that can carry that out. But if we can, we should do it. There was a hand up before, I think. Okay. Yes. So the question is whether faculty or staff who are engaged in, I wouldn't say in casual, but engaged in international collaboration or discussion, probably in addition to personal travel. I think that probably the common scenario. If there's any UIC authorized or approved activity, the personal travel component is not relevant. So you're going for 2 weeks back to visit family, but you're going to visit 3 universities while you're on that trip. That's totally UIC authorized travel, and you should have access to the enrollment and to the insurance. So it doesn't matter if you're doing multiple things, as long as a portion of what you're doing is UIC authorized, you should, I would encourage you, you're not required to, but I would encourage you, go and enroll and get the insurance as well. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. I don't remember who was next, the next question.
I think it's a really good idea to call attention to that. It occurs to me that language learning. We're living in a global city, it seems like there's a lot of opportunities.
So the question was about activities within Chicago that would have an international theme that would count towards a certificate. And we actually talked about that, and I think would be encouraging of that within a specialization if there was a local activity with an international theme or flavor that I couldn't imagine why that wouldn't count. And yeah, that would, we've tried to craft this to be as flexible as possible to get as many students to be interested as possible. So that's a great point, but we have had discussions about that too, and agree. I think that will.
It has to be credit bearing. That would be the one stipulation, because there's just no way for us to keep track of it if it's not credit bearing.
For example, LA allows you to have
Good example. Yeah.
Another example would be if you had a research lab, and we have a lot of undergrads in our research labs, and we have a lot of national scholars come and do extended work in those labs. For our department, we're very strong with Brazilian collaborators. So let's say an undergraduate student enrolled in this certificate was interested in research, enrolled for credits, but then worked with this international scholar while they were here. I would imagine that would be something that could fit in as well and be experienced.
I would be remiss if I didn't say also language classes aren't your grandfather's language classes, right? So language classes aren't just about grammar and exercises, but there's an immense cultural component in the language classes that our basic language coordinators that work really hard to make sure is in there. So, that's not an either or to represent the school.
So my question is there a arrangement to welcome
See if I can rephrase that question. The question is basically what UIC offers new international students coming on campus and scholars. And so the Office of International Services is the office that is assigned to welcome a part of it because it's the university community. We don't offer airport pickup. It would be logistically too involved. So we roughly have, first and foremost, so that you know that under the immigration regulations, students can arrive 30 days prior to the start of classes. So from that 30 days, people might want to come early to look for housing or whatever it is. So you're looking at 30 days of ins and outs. So we roughly, this year, we had about 1,000 new international students. So we average, since I've been here, we've averaged anywhere from about to 1,500 new international students that come every fall semester. And then we have about 200 roughly that come in the spring. And then we have the cohort programs that go out throughout the year. But during all of that time, all of the international students not only connect with what we call our First Friends program, which is kind of an email system that goes from international students that have already been on campus to those that are new to campus. And they ask peer-to-peer, basically what to pack, how's the weather, what they like, what neighborhoods and all that. And so when they come, they meet them. And then this year they're launching activities each month. And we have, so we have that. And then we have the customized orientation programs throughout the beginning of each semester. We run about 2 weeks of an intense program. This year, we changed the model to a conference style so that the international students that are coming in, all of them are contacted on topics that they would like to learn about. We decide based on how many, so if everybody wants to know about safety in Chicago, we do offer that as one of the big topics. And so it's offered throughout for 2 weeks. They can choose a time and the date that works for their schedule. And then they can, participate in the seminars that they want. Then at the end of this, right before the start of the semester, we have what's called the summit, which is an all-day activity that talks about their immigration responsibilities, but also about the U.S. classroom culture, the cultural academic integrity of things. And then Friday, the weekend before classes start, we have a welcome barbecue, which averages about this year about 1,800 students, new and returning students, as well as scholars that are invited. We have the forum. And so that kind of kicks it off. And then we have the convocation that usually follows on that Sunday. And then a week later, we take them on a shopping tour as well, so that they can get to know each other. And then throughout the year, they have lots of other activities. For example, next Saturday, we're taking over 200 students to a pumpkin farm to look at the cultural differences. In November, we have a Thanksgiving dinner that we provide for all of our international students and scholars. We average about 1,500 that we'll feed through that. So there's a lot of welcoming going on. We work very close. we work at, the Thanksgiving dinner started at my house and then it kind of grew too big. But there's a lot of activities that we do and we're always constantly adding as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Because you haven't asked a question. Yes.
Okay, so the question again was about if you invite international collaborators or researcher scholars to the university, the fee that the university has to put in place for the processing. As many of you may or may not know, the Office of International Services is responsible for all the immigration. Unfortunately, there is no university funding for that office. It was decided, I don't know how many years ago, I've been here over 16 years, and it was decided years back that would have to be a burden of both the colleges and the departments for those processing fees. So basically, those fees pay for our case management system. It also pays the government for what they charge, and 75% of the charges go directly to the federal government. The rest of it is to pay salaries for the staff as well. So that's why there is a fee. B1s do not, so visitors, if there's a short-term visit or whatever it is, those are not charged. It's anything that the university directly is sponsoring. So employment-based as well. So anything employment-based, the departments will bear their cost. And there has been discussion on the various colleges as far as, what about a department that is not so heavily funded? And so supposedly some of the colleges have stepped up and said they will cover, most of it is on the web that I know of. But our fees have not gone up for almost 10 years. I tried to be a very good steward of that money so that you don't. When it does go up, it's usually because the government has increased the fees that they charge us. This year, there probably will be an increase because the federal government has decided to raise significantly the amount of fees that they're going to charge for services that they provide. Because like us, the service centers are not to take dollars, so they operate on fees as well. So the 90-day limitation is typically a visitor, and though there are no fees assessed to a B1. So, or a WB if they're on a visa waiver program. The fees that you're talking about, the $650, the J program and all that kind of stuff, it was decided when the fee structure was put in that the departments would be responsible for that rather than the internationals. A lot of the international J1s are self-funded. And so it was decided that the should bear that cost, and that was above my pay grade.
Maybe is there?
So on the J, no, there is no, except for the fact the only thing in the J1 regulations is that you have to disclose to the visitor all fees and charges that they will incur before they come in, and you can thank Disney for the federal government for that one. For the employment base, the H1s, the O1s, the TNs and all that, there is a federal mandate. It's in the regulations, the employer has to pay those fees.
It sounds like it was an institution.
Right.
Well, if I may say one thing about
Is there any institutional tracking of visitors or delegations? It's not mandatory. Well, it depends on their visa status, but let's assume they're here as visitors to the campus and to the country. We actually have online a system by which you can tell us that you have international visitors coming to campus. And it's also a mechanism for us to provide support if you feel or we feel that you need that. So it's actually, if you go to the OG website, there's or what's the official term? Distinguished. Isn't it distinguished visitors form? Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very short form. It just says how many coming, when coming, where are they coming from? You know what it's going to be about. I mean, you have a concrete agenda for it. That's also in there, and it goes directly to Nora's office and the Office of International Services, and they coordinate and decide, well, there's no immigration support here needed, or there is, but then we can also offer other kinds of support services that the might want. Yeah. Sure. Please. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We would like people to use it, so please use it. I think we have run through the hour.
If you will sign in for today's session, in case you want to go back and learn anything specific or find out how to, so here, we'll get that sent out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to my colleagues.